Chapter 1 Creation Part 1 In the beginning of everything that ever was, God created the heavens and the earth. A boring, formless mass of liquid cloaked in darkness, the earth had relatively low property value, but tons of potential. The Spirit of God, hovering above it like a comic book villain, said,
"Let there be light."
And the whole place lit up magically without any point of origin. To ensure this bright new creation would forever be different from the black void, the Creator named one of them Light and the other Darkness. God saw what he had done and, needless to say, was extremely impressed with himself. The following day, determined to best his brilliant invention of light, God separated the waters in two, and he called the upper part sky, leaving the bottom half unnamed before taking the rest of the evening off. On the third day, he commanded the waters move aside to give some space for something more solid, and chose this moment to give both the land and the seas their familiar names and locations.
"Let the land burst forth with all kinds of grass and seed-bearing plants," he exclaimed,
brilliantly anticipating the need for each seed to produce the same kind of plant that bore it in the first place. He set the laws of heredity in motion before the day was through. Although it was difficult for even God to be certain if he had surpassed himself, he could see that it was all good. Deciding his new creation required adequate lighting, God set about creating an astonishing variety of distinct light sources that pockmarked the sky. Most were tiny and insignificant, but two of them were special. The first, and most glorious, was the sun. Having spent most of his talent making this shining beauty, God gave it the top spot during the day, leaving the dimmer moon stuck with the night shift. Taking a look at this new illuminated cosmos, his humble fabulous congratulated himself yet again on a job amazingly well done, and took it easy for a while. After a tumultuous fourth day of building an entire universe of stars to properly orient a future creation he had yet to build, God slowed things down a little and put his focus on filling his new world with hordes of birds and fish, commanding them to breed until the entire earth was overrun with scaly and feathery creatures. With these two species well on their way towards world domination, God put up his feet and rested. Saving the best for last, on his final day of creation, God decided to design something a little more in his own image, and after continuing to improve on his animal menagerie, he finally built the first humans, both male and female, simultaneously. After giving them a nice blessing, he informed this new species that all the other creatures in his magnificent garden were theirs to do as they saw fit, and that this world was their new playground. And so, with an entire universe now functioning with clockwork efficiency, God decided to take Saturday off to wind down and relax a little. Creation Part 2 Creating paradise was no easy task, and God had no desire to spend his free time doing the hard work of tilling the soil or making sure the place didn't fall apart. To rectify this situation, he grabbed a handful of wet dirt and fashioned a clay Pinocchio out of it. After giving it magical CPR, the creation burst to life like a shitty Disney movie. God named him Adam, meaning man, and to lodge this special new creation, he built a garden on the east side of the globe and filled it with delicious fruit trees. At the center of the garden, God planted two trees with magical properties. The first was a tree whose fruit could grant the knowledge of good and evil, while the second offered the gift of eternal life. Putting man in charge of running the place despite his inexperience, God told Adam he could enjoy the flesh of any fruit in the garden save one, the enticingly mysterious tree of the knowledge of good and evil.
If you eat this fruit,
he explained,
you'll fucking die.
Deciding man was best not left alone to his own devices, God formed an endless array of different creatures, both large and small, and showcased them to his new bipedal creation. Adam gave them all names, but none seemed to suit his sexual proclivities. In a stroke of genius, God placed Adam in a deep sleep to stealthily remove one of his ribs, and used it to form a sexier, sleeker version of his finicky creation. When he finally awoke, Adam instantly fell madly in love with this mutated part of himself, and named it woman in his honor. Of all the creatures created to service man, the most devious was by far the snake. One day he approached Adam's wife, who was eating quietly by herself and minding her own business, to ask,
"Didn't God tell you you weren't allowed to eat any of the fruits in the garden?"
"Of course we can eat what we want,"
she replied.
"It's only from the tree in the middle of the garden that we aren't supposed to touch. God says we'll die if we do."
"You won't die, you stupid idiot,"
hissed the serpent.
"The only reason God doesn't want you to eat it is because he's afraid you'll become just like him and be able to tell the difference between right and wrong. That's all."
Possessing no innate wisdom and enticed by the forbidden fruit, Adam's wife couldn't resist and took a large bite. She hurriedly shared the prize with Adam, and in an instant, both saw their extreme nudity and suddenly understood the principle of body shame. Gathering the most delicate fabric available at the time, coarse fig leaves, the couple fashioned the world's first and undoubtedly worst pair of underwear. In the evening, as God was strolling through the garden, Adam and his wife hid themselves among the trees to avoid being seen.
"Where are you?"
shouted the omniscient creator of the universe.
"We heard you, God, so we hid because we were afraid you'd see us naked,"
replied Adam.
"Who told you about the shame of being nude?"
God asked.
"Did you eat from the tree I specifically told you not to?"
"Yes, but to be fair, she made me do it,"
Adam replied courageously as he pointed to his wife. God turned to her angrily and bellowed,
"How could you do such a thing, you twat?"
"It was the snake,"
she said.
"He tricked me. That's why I ate it."
"Because you did this,
Yahweh thundered at his slithery creation.
I'm gonna punish you, snake. First I'll amputate your limbs so you're forced to crawl around on your stomach your whole fucking life. Then, of all the animals on this planet, I've chosen your species to be cursed with the most violent and twisted sex. Finally, to top it all off, I'll make sure your own offspring will be constantly trying to kill you.
God then turned to the woman and said,
From now on, it's gonna hurt like a bitch every time you give birth. And while you might feel a burning desire for your husband, he'll be your master from now on. So shut your mouth and do whatever he tells you to do. No questions asked. As for you, Adam, for the crime of having listened to your wife and done something wrong without the ability to distinguish it from right, I will now curse the ground and make it a pain in the ass for things to grow. You'll toil endlessly and have almost nothing to show for it at the end of the day. I'm even going to invent something called thorns on some plants so your hands get all cut up and shit just to annoy you. I made you out of dust, and that's what you'll eventually turn back into. Jackass!
It was then that a chastised and defeated Adam finally gave his wife a name, Eve, the mother of all people. After killing a few of his creatures and fashioning some clothing from their hollowed-out skins, God presented his children with these final parting gifts. Deadly afraid that they might disobey him again and eat from the tree of life and become gods themselves, Yahweh, like any inexperienced parent trying to discipline their child, chose the only course of action. He kicked them out of the house for good. As a positive sign of future relations, God stationed uber-powerful angelic security guards at the east side of the gate, and set up a friendly flaming sword to forever guard the path to the tree of life. Life was harsh in a new land cursed by a loving God, but Adam and Eve trudged on, and like any young couple in love who barely know one another, they quickly had a child. Despite the pain of labor, Eve was grateful for her new son Cain, and thanked God for her baby. The couple soon had a second son, whom they called Abel. Abel became a shepherd, while Cain labored the land. When it was time to make the first sacrifices to God, the sweet smell of sinew and burnt blood pleased God more than that of roasted vegetables. This greatly angered Cain, who had worked harder for his sacrifice.
"Why are you so angry?"
asked God.
"If you act cool, then there won't be a problem. But if you don't fall in line, you better watch out. Sin's out there to destroy you, pal. I should know. I invented it."
Enraged by jealousy and refusing to listen to God's advice, Cain invited his brother Abel for a nice walk in the field. When no one was looking, a simple feat given the size of the population, he grabbed a nearby rock and cracked Abel's head open like a walnut. Shortly after burying his brother in a shallow grave, Cain was visited by God, who inquired on the whereabouts of Abel.
I don't know,
He said, overreacting.
Am I my brother's keeper, man?
"You think I'm an idiot?
Replied God.
I can hear your dead brother's blood crying out from the ground, you fool! And now, because you committed the first homicide in the short history of mankind, I will banish you from here. From this moment on, you will be a vagabond, forever roaming the earth like a bum."
Hey man, that's a bit harsh for a little old fratricide, don't you think?
Cain said defiantly.
Not only are you banishing me from your highly localized presence, you decided to turn me into a hobo. Anyone who sees me is going to try to kill me.
Pausing for a moment to salvage his poorly thought-out punishment, God finally replied,
"I'll make sure no one tries to kill you. If they do, I'll give them 7 times your arbitrary punishment. Your Lord and Master has spoken."
Then, to make sure anyone would know not to fuck with him, God gave Cain a badass scar and sent him on his way. And so Cain left the Lord's designated area, and rather than wander aimlessly forever, he settled with his wife in the land of Nod. There he built a city and named it after his first son, Enoch. His family would go on to have a long line of descendants, some of whom became successful inventors and smiths, while others went on to become the world's first musicians. As for his great-great-great-grandson Lamech, not only was he the world's first polygamist, but he also continued the family tradition of taking a life and promising the Lord's revenge on anyone who would dare punish him for it. At the tender age of 130 years old, Adam had another son whom he called Seth. Though unremarkable in life, Seth would live vicariously through the achievements of his own son Enosh, who set the precedent for worshiping God. Time marched on, and some of God's angels began to take notice of all the hot, available females down on earth. Copulating with them furiously, they soon filled the earth with a race of supergiants, much to God's great displeasure. While it was true that people were sinning less, This was mainly due to the fact that the Mighty One had reset the maximum human lifespan at a century rather than a millennium or so, although this had done little to fix the basic problem of everyone being a little shit. Disappointed with how his first attempt at creation had turned out, God regretted creating them in the first place.
I'm gonna completely wipe them off the face of the earth,
he said to himself, heartbroken.
and I'll destroy all the animals and birds who walk on the land for good measure. I'm sorry to bother making these assholes.